We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast, the movie book library. Are you gaining as much benefit as I am and others are? I hope so. If you're not, you know, why? Is it because you don't have clarity on, your life system or your life vision, what you're put on this planet to do? Anyways, we might get into that a little bit, but today's we're going to be going through System Busters. System Busters book is, I'm telling you, this thing is an insane book. It's a guy that I think, as far as I know, he's only written one book and he owns a printing company. And when I read through this, I'm a big systems guy. When I read through this, I was in awe. Like, I'm like, this guy, it's insane. Like, he's got systems for systems for systems. I mean, it's just, and he just owned a printing company. But everything was broken down into the small pieces. Will any of you read this? The chances are probably not, which is weird to me. Like, why wouldn't you read it? If you did read it, would you communicate to me what you learned from it? I mean, I haven't read this book probably in maybe 20 years. And this thing had such a significant impact on me. I mean, it literally changed the way I think. And so my lovely wife, she wanted to go ahead and 40 years, she wanted me to go ahead and talk about the 530 grid and give the history of it. But today we were scheduled to talk about system busters. So it's weird because then she said, because she believes so much and she's so much in love with me, even after 40 years, like it's unbelievable. She's like, well, can you do both, honey? I'm sure you can do both. And so we'll give you the history of the 530 grid because it's pretty crazy. But the system busters, if there's any mistake that was made in his company, he had a system for looking at going through and saying, is this a human mistake or is it, a mechanical mistake? Like, did we build the system different? Everything was like, everything is so analytic, so precise in what it was. And so I would love for any of you to go through this book and read it. And then after each chapter, while you're going through it, email me. And shoot, I'll give you my email, my personal email. It's MBOERSMA. That's MBOERSMA, the number 5 at gmail.com. So Boersma, the number 5 at gmail.com. And so as you're going through this, now it would be weird, wouldn't it? If there were things in the book that I picked up from over 20 years ago that I picked up that you don't even see. That would be just strange. And so we do a number of podcasts on Saturday, sometimes up to 5 or 6 of them. And so systems are just a beautiful thing. They're just absolutely beautiful. So one of the things that we're doing on Saturdays are going to be revamping the educational system in America and around the world. You might be thinking, was he going to do the system busters and the 530 grid and that other? You'll see magic happen here because it all connects down into the flawless thinking model. You might be thinking, what's the flawless thinking model? That's a good question. It took me, I don't know, 55 years of being on this planet to come up with the flawless thinking model. So the flawless thinking model, it's learning to see, think, and do, think, and see, do, and think. I mean, there's 6 different ways you can do this. And so it's learning to see the world in a very different way than we see it. So Elaine and I are working on a book, and it's titled Clean Windows: Learning to See Things We Can't See. And man, is that thing hard to. I've written it, then I've rewritten, and then I've rewritten. I've never had this difficult because it's like, what's it going to take to go ahead and get people to actually see it? Now, the most important thing, like our granddaughters, we have 10 grandkids, 6 granddaughters. And so our granddaughters, I can't wait for them to explain the flawless thinking model. And two of them are, I think, on now, and they're 3 and 4. And so they could explain the flawless thinking model where it's curious questions. It's questions up here and curious. And so to be curious, you have to be humble. And the story of the 530 grid, the story of the 530 grid is humility. That's the essence of the 530 grid. If we're going to go ahead and change the educational system and how it's done in America and around the world, we have to be humble. And so, System Busters, the book, combined with the flawless thinking model. So there's 26 different elements in the flawless thinking model. Underneath that, there's literally tens of thousands of sub-elements that all come together. And so when we look at the 530 grid, you might think that's a business application, but it's far, far more than business. And so the 530 grid, when I first introduced it to Tom Kuntz, 19 years ago, 21 years ago, something like that. When I introduced it to Tom, I said, "Hey, look at this." So Tom, he's a past president of Century 21, largest real estate franchise in the world. Over 140,000 agents in over 70 different countries. He raised over $100 million for Easter seals. So we wrote a book, Community Business Partnerships. So is Kerneath and I going to write a book to change the educational system in America and around the world? I could see that happening. Now, in the 530 grid, the story behind that my wife asked me to share was, I don't know what it was, 24, 5, 6 years ago. I was coaching a client on Action Vision. And I said, 1 to 10, how would you rate the coaching? And I forget if he said an 8 or a 9. He said an 8 or 9. I forget which one it was, but he said 8 or 9. And I said, what would it take to get to a 10? And he said, take all of your knowledge and condense it down into one 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Well, I laughed and I thought he's joking. Like he's not serious. Like you can't like I'm not very smart. You know, it's funny because nobody said I was smart until I turned 40. And then all of a sudden everybody, told me how smart I was. And when you go 40 years, not being very smart, you go ahead and and you don't know how to respond when somebody says, so this is my journal. This is part of my journal, about a tenth of my journal. And so I'm looking for the slide here. If I can find the original one. Ooh, there it is. But I don't know that you'll be able to see it. We'll see. So it might take me just a second. I'll tell the story when I'm doing it. So it's right up in the upper left-hand side, or upper right-hand side. It's right here. So you can see kind of the elements. So I came back the next month and I said, I asked the same client, I said, 1 to 10, how would you rate the coaching? And he said, same thing, 8 or 9. And I said, what would it take to get to a 10? And he said, I told you last month. I said, you were serious? He's like, yeah. I thought he was joking. I'm like, there's no way you can go ahead. But I'm thinking, well, if he thinks I'm smart enough to condense everything I know down into that, actually, it's this one right here. This is the one right here. So I don't know if I've got that where you can see it. So all of these models come from pain. you say, wow, you must have had a lot of pain in your life. Yep.
These
So
are brilliant.
I don't, yeah, Oh, this is it. We found it. This is the original one. Like this is the original one. So
Wow.
yeah. So I went home that night and I woke up the next morning and I put this all together like in, I don't know, like in an hour or so, a couple hours. And I'm like, three steps to anything, it's examination, solution, and implementation. In the examination, it goes down through here, and then solutions go down through here, and then the implementation is you go down through here. And I showed this to Tom, and he's like, this is freaking genius, Mark. This is amazing. And like, I don't think you understand what you have here. I said, well, I think I do. And he's like, I don't think so. I said, what do you think I have? He said, the holy grail of business. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's that. And he's like it's crazy, Mark. It's like the DNA for business. Like it'll work for a kid with a lemonade stand and it'll work for a multi-trillion dollar worldwide business. And I had a lemonade stand as a kid. And I'm like, I need to figure. And so the humility was that I trusted the client and when he asked for it, I did it. And then Tom did something interesting. He said, you got to take all these lines out, all these arrows. You got to take them all out. And I'm fighting it. And I'm like, you can't take them out, Tom. Like, I didn't say it to Tom. Like, I'm thinking, like, he's the president of the largest real estate franchise in the world, probably knows what he's doing. Just do what he tells. And I'm like, you can't take it out because this is art. This is this is art. Everything connects to everything else. Like everything's interconnected. The interconnections are crazy. But I didn't say anything. I just said, okay. So I stripped out all the little arrows. And then he said, so explain it to me. I said, well, you can implement it in different ways. Like you can go ahead and implement it horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, or you can do it box by box. He said, what's the diagonal? I said, well, you start in the upper left and you go for the lower right. And he says, you need to put numbers in there. And I remember being frustrated. It's like, I thought you said it was too complicated. And now you're saying, but I just did it. I just trusted him. Something people have a hard time. And I'm the artist. Like I'm the artist. I'm the one that came up with this. I mean, God gave it to me. So it's not because I'm smart. Like I'm not. I'm far below average. But I think in a different way. And so I think, how do I take things that are complicated and simplify them down? And so then what I did is then I went ahead and um, so then we got it down into the 530 grid. So the boss system, and Tom helped with this, and some others help with this. And so the boss system is the business operating system. It's the engine that runs our business or organization. This is what education needs. So what's missing in the arts is business, and what's missing in business is the arts. So why are there so many starving artists out there? Because they don't understand business. What does business needs? Business needs the arts. They need the creativity like the soul. In a Thomas Jefferson education, they talk about how the educational system was created, how it was architected, why it was created. It was created to go ahead and it was designed to create factory workers. This is not the world we live in now. So like I once asked a high school physics teacher. He was at a small group at church that he came in. He introduced himself. He said he's a physics perspective at a Christian school. And I said, I have a question I've been really curious about. He's like, okay. And I said, what's faster, the speed of light? And again, a physics professor is thinking what? There's nothing faster than the speed of light. I said, the speed of light or the speed of thought. He looked at me and he's like, what? Like this. I just introduced myself and immediately I have that question because I've been thinking. He says, man, I think you need to talk to a brain scientist to go ahead and because it's like it's apples and oranges, or is it like the speed of thought can jump? So it's almost like anyways. So the business operating system, or we could put an educational operating system. We need a new educational operating system in our schools. We just do. Because they're teaching, like we homeschooled our 7 kids. Our oldest kids we did from K to 12. And then our middle ones halfway through, and our youngest ones just a little bit, and then they went into public schools. And when I was walking through the public schools, so most elementary education teachers are going to be women. I believe that the elementary education system is the best educational system that we have of all of them. Not saying it can't improve. I'm just saying that it's the best of all of them. Every, middle school gets less effective, high school gets less effective, and college gets less effective. Everything goes down. And so what I saw though is I saw that there's all these sayings all over the school about compliance, getting along, not fighting, not questioning the system. So essentially what they're teaching is they're teaching a bunch of followers. They're not teaching people to be leaders. They're not teaching people to think. They're not teaching people to ask the hard question. They're not teaching any of that. So we could create, an EOS, an educational operating system on how to think differently. In the BOS, there's 3 elements to the BOS. And so the first is the DNA for people. It's the ability to identify somebody's personality in 17 seconds. Once you know their personality, you know the strengths, weaknesses, what they like, what they don't, turns them on, turns them off. If they're married, who they're married to, conflict marriage, you know more about that person in 17 seconds than they know about themselves. Like, how powerful would this be? How powerful would this be if every teacher in the world knew this? Like, I didn't like school. I mean, I struggled through it. I was an average to below average student. I loved business. I loved it all the way down into grade school. I knew I would own my own business. I could feel it. It's in my DNA. Now, if any teacher, and no teacher all the way through, not one teacher all the way through 3 degrees in college, there's not one teacher that connected what they were teaching into my life vision. Not one. There's not one. What's interesting now is I'm very interested in science and history and English and all kinds of stuff. Not because I'm interested in any of those things, because I'm honestly not, but I am interested in business. I'm interested in changing people's lives. Einstein said, you can never solve a problem on the level it was created. What does that mean? It means that we're not going to we create our own problems. Tom Kuhn says that, that the people, the industry that there's a problem in, it's not going to be solved by the industry because they're blinders. So educators, the leaders in education, they've created their own problems. And they're not going to solve it until so you never solve on the dimension, and you got to go to a new dimension. So the DNA for life, there's over 500 natural laws we've discovered that apply to all areas. And so what they're doing is, I believe every child is entrepreneurial. Why? Because entrepreneurs, they create things from nothing. So a child has an imagination, but I believe every year they're going through the school system, that imagination, that creativity, that questioning of authority, questioning of how things are done, that's what an entrepreneur does. And the DNA, so there's 5 levels in business. And so when you look at these 5 levels, so you have marketing. How do you generate more and better leads? This, if you want to make money, understand the 530 grid. If you want to raise money for a great cause, understand the 530 grid. If you want to raise up volunteers, if you want to raise up employees, if you want to raise up teachers or staffing, any of that, anything having to do with people or money, the 530 grid will help you do that in the most efficient manner. And so in the 530 grid, there's 5 areas. And so marketing, how do you generate more and better leads? So recruiting for teachers, where do you get them? And then pre-sales is when somebody raised their hands, what do you do with them? And then the sale is the yes or the no. And then servicing is how do you create a raving fan experience for your clients? And then client for life is how do you build lifelong relationships? And you're only as strong as your smallest link. You're only as strong as your smallest link, your weakest link. It's like a pipeline. And so if your area 2 is weak, then everything's going to be weak. It can't get stronger. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so in understanding this, and so I've developed curriculum, all kinds of curriculum, looked in the psychology of the students, the learning modalities, visual, verbal, kinesthetic learners. Somebody just asked me yesterday, Mark, is your background in psychology? And it's like, my background is in helping people. People ask, what do you do for a living? And it's like, sometimes I'll say, I'm a mental chiropractor. I'm helping people to learn to think differently. And so then there's 6 levels of proficiency in each of these. And there's different ways to learn them. And so when you look at the flawless thinking model, flawless thinking is not perfect thinking, it's thinking less flawed. And that's what's missing in our educational system. It's flawed thinking. And the more degrees you have in our educational system, the more money that you make. But because you have more book knowledge does not mean that you have more wisdom. And so the 530 grid is a gift, I believe. It was given to me. Almost like the 10 Commandments. Like, yes, my mind came up with it, yes, from education experience, mostly experience, and going through and figuring out, like, why does this work and why doesn't this work? And how do you get people to make it work and all of those types of things. And so the 530 grid is a part of a solution to changing the educational system in America and the world. So if you're interested, when I say interested, I'm not saying talking about changing education in America around the world. I'm doing something about it. Like the Amish, they have something, their educational system is insane. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I've never experienced anything like it until we moved out into the Elkhart, Indiana area, which is big Amish country. I didn't know that the normal Amish individual has an 8th grade education. I didn't know that. And then I started working with the Amish, and they're just freaking smart. And I'm like, and they're so hungry to learn. And they're fearless and they're phenomenal entrepreneurs. I mean, it's like, how do they do that? So how do you go ahead and produce a better student to life with an 8th grade education than the English, which is anything other than Amish? Like the Jewish, you have Jews and then Amish, Black, everybody other than Black, Hispanic. So with different groups of people, it's us and then everybody else is something. So the English means everybody other than Amish. So you have a 12th grade education. How do you produce somebody as a better student in 8th grade than you do 12? or 16 or 20. So I meet with an Amish guy. He has an eighth grade education, very successful businessman. And so if you're not familiar with Mensa, it's like, I don't know, the 0.002 smartest people in the world. Like they're absolutely, they're like the geniuses of geniuses. And I've known Alvin Miller for, I don't know, a year, couple years, meet with him every week. He's never mentioned that. And then, I don't know, a week or so ago, we were talking and a guy came up and he shared a story about Mensa. So Mensa is the smartest people in the world. They're unbelievable. And I was familiar with them, you know, and he said he took a Reader's Digest test, Mensa, and they got back to him and said, we want you to take a more, another test. And he went through that and then another test. And then he went and was invited to, to be interviewed and stuff. And he was interviewed and they, invited him to join Mensa with an eighth grade education. Like, what? Like, what? He didn't join. Why? Because he's like, Mark, those people were so stuck up. They were so full of them. They thought they were so smart. My father-in-law, who never graduated from, from high school, he was so I have 3 degrees in business, finance management, and marketing. My wife has a degree in elementary education, and we were at her graduation, and we were, in the stands, and he says, "Do you know why we're here today?" And I said, well, to celebrate, the graduates. He's like, "No, we're here to actually celebrate all the people on the stage with all their regalia and all their, so it's to make them feel smart." So the educational system is going to change. It's going to change one way or another. It just will. Just like it's going to be do it willingly or it's going to do it by force. I mean, something's going to change. It has to. If you're a doer, not a talker, a lot of people in education, they're talkers. They talk, but they don't do. See, business people, business owners, entrepreneurs, they're doers. They do things. They make things happen, and they're okay with breaking things, making mistakes. That's how you learn. So if you're one of those that are talker, you're not going to do well in this group. Voices of integrity for changing education. You're not going to do well in this group. You don't even need. You're just going to be offended, hurt, and angry. But if you're a doer and you want to change education in America and all around the world, then connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300 outside the U.S. 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. If you thought this one was good, stick around for the next podcast, because that one's going to be even more exciting, where we're going to have Kernitha share, some of her thoughts. So have an amazing day. Bye-bye.